All right, so we're back, and welcome. This is the EMP portion of our show today, and we're with ML Kingsley and Chuck Manto. And Chuck, why don't you take it over, just clean up a little bit on Part A, and let's get right into Part B.
Sure. So the surprising difference is that in the past, people had some difficulty talking about EMP because there were all the political issues. For example, well, does that mean we have to have a missile defense system? Some people didn't like that. Whenever you had a bad guy scenario where terrorists might be able to do this, very often people would get caught around the axles over that issue and not really even address the issue thoroughly. What's changed is that when they noticed that the 100-year solar storm could cause a nationwide blackout that could last 6 to 12 months, with full restoration taking 4 to 10 years, because the transformers that would be damaged take over. Most of all of them now come from overseas. We have a very significant problem on our hands just from Mother Nature alone. And that has spurred now the development of a couple of pieces of legislation, the SHIELD Act and the GRID Act, which are focusing the federal government to empower the FERC to be able to work with the industry to come up with solutions to harden the grid. For people like myself, it encourages us to do things like maybe we make 20% of our own power. So if the grid does fail, we are still going to be alive and well. Or from an emergency management perspective, maybe we look at plan Bs that we might have to make our communities far more viable. So because of that, we could switch over to what's being done now. We had a conversation at the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle last year, where folks from the Defense Department, Homeland Security, utilities, and emergency management folks were gathered. And we noticed two things as a result of this threat looming over us from the 100-year solar storm. Number one, all the Defense Department bases have pretty much outsourced their power to the civilian world, like much of the rest of their inputs. And they realized that if the power grid were to fail, most of our military bases would have to shut down, and DoD's ability to perform their mission would be threatened. Secondly, what we discovered is that no federal agency, military or civilian, has done any preparation for a nationwide simultaneous collapse of critical infrastructure like the grid that would last more than a week or two. And now that we're facing something that could last months or a year, we're really caught with our pants down. So one of the things we did, we approached the folks at the National Defense University, which is a grad school for the military and the State Department, and asked if they were hosting a series of scenarios and training exercises and workshops that would look just at this very phenomenon. And that's what we're planning on October 3, 4, 5, and 6. And if you were to go to a website, sustaining-people.com, it's sustaining people with a hyphen in the middle, you'll find information not only about what InfraGard's doing, but what's happening at these War College locations, or National War College location, and also in Maryland. And you might have some questions about that I could answer in this segment.
Well, yeah, I could certainly get more into that. I think a lot of people are really on the edge when it comes to solar storm, though. I don't think people really understand it all. Like I said, I think a lot of the presentation material on EMP had to do with the co-mixing of cabling and wiring and things of that nature. Why don't you get a little bit more into the solar storm area and, what is the likelihood? I saw in one of your PowerPoint slides in the wee hours of the morning that you were talking about a detonated bomb at 30 feet. Impact X, you bring it up another 30, 60 feet, another impact as you go through. Why don't you get a little bit more into that so people understand, what is the impact and what is the likelihood?
Sure. When you're looking at electromagnetic interference that you normally get from wires or even a static charge, that's something that we experience day to day. With a weapon that's burst in the upper atmosphere, so at a 30-mile burst, you have a 480-mile radius of impact. At 120 miles, you have a 1,000-mile radius of impact, and at 300 miles, a 1,400-mile radius of impact. And that's well known from the standpoint of what you would do if you had a single weapon and you just wanted to damage the infrastructure of the country, cause trillions of dollars of damage, and perhaps force us to bring our military back home from places overseas. So there's a very interesting set of military doctrine around this. For example, Israeli military officials believe if somebody wanted to do a preemptive strike on Israel, they would first do an EMP laydown on us so that we'd be too busy taking care of our own problems and wouldn't be able to help them. But the solar storm scenario, which is far less political to talk about, is something very similar. The sun spits out plasma or material that comes into our atmosphere, and the gamma rays, for example, strip off electrons, which then come to Earth. Also, it causes a ground reaction from within our own magnetic system that creates ground-induced currents. And that's very similar to one of the three kinds of pulses that happen in a nuclear detonation. So what people are concerned about is all of these long-distance systems, for example, power grids and communication systems can actually be overcharged through their ground wires, causing shorts within the transformer windings. And when you have a short circuit in a transformer winding because there's too much electromagnetic charge there than it was designed to handle, then you could have disruption or actually damage of the transformers themselves. And so if you go on these websites, including my own, which is stop-emp.com, it's stop EMP with a hyphen in between two words, you'll see examples of studies from NERC and FERC and the Academy of Sciences and the EMP Commission, which talks about the vulnerabilities of our power grid to just these kinds of attacks.
Well, I hate to interrupt you there, but we just got word of a zombie attack coming in from Microsoft. We'll be back right after this word from Microsoft and the zombies. So we'll be right back with you, and we're going to follow up on EMP and what needs to be done, what can be done, and what could be done, and InfraGard's role in just a minute, right after this word from our friends over at Microsoft. And look out for the zombies.